The Kremlin has issued a fake about the heroic rescue of Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, whose helicopter allegedly found itself in the epicenter of a massive attack by Ukrainian drones in the Kursk region. There are serious grounds to believe that this was a crude staging. The intensity of the attack during the flight of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief's aircraft over the territory of the Kursk region increased significantly. Therefore, we simultaneously conducted anti-aircraft combat and ensured the safety of the president's helicopter in the air. In fact, Putin's helicopter was at the epicenter of repelling the enemy's massive attack. The officer of the Russian armed forces, who was obviously tasked with voicing this fairy tale, stated in a rehearsed and unconvincing manner. From the very first words, it became clear that we are not looking at an eyewitness account, but at a carefully rehearsed text. The lack of living details, the repetition of memorized phrases, and the obvious strain in the intonation betray the falseness. It seems that the officer is merely relaying a manual handed down from above, without having any real relation to the events described. The main question that arises when analyzing this story is whether Putin was in the Kursk region at all at the same time in question. Considering the Russian leader's panic fear for his safety, his extremely rare and always carefully staged appearances among the people, the very assumption of his personal presence in the frontline region raises serious doubts. Putin very rarely leaves his residence, preferring to distance himself as much as possible from any risks. His meetings with ordinary Russians have long been the talk of the town. Numerous journalistic investigations have repeatedly exposed how the role of ordinary citizens at such events is played by employees of the FSO and other special services, carefully selected and instructed. If Putin does visit any regions, it happens under conditions of unprecedented security measures, and information about his movements is kept in the strictest confidence. It is unlikely that his helicopter could have been at the epicenter of a real drone attack. Rather, this whole story is just another attempt to create a heroic aura around a figure who in reality prefers to be in a deep bunker, far from any danger. It is important to note that the Kremlin has previously told a story about the alleged shooting down of a helicopter with Putin on board. The dictator himself claimed that in 2000 that he mistook a strike on his aircraft in Chechnya for a salute. There is no evidence that this story actually happened. Ukraine is launching drone strikes across Russia to demonstrate that the war is everyone's business. The focus on Moscow and the surrounding region is intended to increase pressure on the Russian leadership. Aviation expert and leading researcher at the National Aviation University, Valery Romanenko, told about this. He noted that Kiev does not carry out targeted strikes on one plant, for example drones or spare parts, because most drones are shot down while still approaching the target. The interlocutor specified that UAVs can fly in different directions, sometimes at one target, but not in such masses as to completely destroy them. It is clear that they are not launched at one object. So far, it is known that they are trying to show the Russians as much as possible that war is not only on TV. Romanenko added. According to the expert, strikes on various regions, from Moscow to Bryansk, Kursk, Crimea, are aimed not only at physically damaging objects, but also at psychologically influencing the population. He noted that due to the air defense actions, drones can be deflected from their targets and even hit residential areas, which helps dispel the illusion of security among Russian residents. Anyone can be under attack. Russians believe that the war is there in Donbass, and therefore it does not concern them. And when it flies, let's say, at a military facility, you understand that next time, because of electronic warfare, it could fall on your house, he said. The aviation expert also noted that the political leadership of Russia is most influenced by the opinions of residents of Moscow and the region, which is why Ukraine is concentrating some of its strikes on these regions. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, during the massive Ukrainian drone strike from May the 20th to the 23rd, 1,177 drones were shot down, 788 of which were outside the active combat zone. Earlier, media reported that on the night of May the 23rd, Russia was again subjected to a massive attack by attack UAVs. Strikes were reported in Ryazan, Ivanovo, Tula and the suburbs of Moscow. The Russian population is terrified by what is happening. They are angry with Vladimir Putin's government for this, because the government is powerless to protect them. Russian propaganda and the Western journalists it misled took Pokrovsk a year ago. But while the Russian occupiers stormed the outskirts of the city, the Ukrainian military erected fortifications around it. Military analyst and director of the new geopolitics research network platform, Mikhail Samus, spoke about this in an interview with Telegraph. He explained that there are 640,000 Russian troops in Ukraine. They can concentrate their efforts and break through the front, but this is unlikely if they did not do this a year ago. They do not have any special tools now that can help, especially since the Ukrainian army has actually created a kill zone. It is 10 to 20 kilometers. The Russians are also creating a kill zone for us. They knock out our logistics with fiber optic drones. But we are not going on the offensive. There is a peculiarity here. When you are on the defensive, you can adapt to this situation. Yes, logistics are difficult, but you can create corridors from nets and close supply routes, at least in the rear, where there is logistics necessary to provide the first and second echelons of defense. This can be done, and it is being done. But I do not see any tools from the Russians that could make a breakthrough, the military expert emphasized. Speaking about the encirclement of the Pokrovsk by Russians, he noted that he did not know how to accomplish this. There are really fierce battles in the Pokrovsk direction, but I don't know how much time and effort it would take to encircle Pokrovsk. The situation is similar with Konstantinovka, says the director of the new geopolitics research network. He reminded that, as in any process, everything depends on the amount of effort per unit of time. If the Russians throw all 640,000 of their troops at Pokrovsk, it might speed up. But if they try to simultaneously take Vovchansk, move in the Kupiansk direction, in Liman, try to break through in Seversk, attack the Kramatorsk-Slavyansk agglomeration, in order to move to Kramatorsk and Slavyansk, they need to break through to Liman, Vremeny Yar, Toretskaya, Konstantinovka. They have been trying to do this for over a year. Will they continue? They can. This is very difficult for the Ukrainian armed forces, but it will all continue at the same pace for another year. How long can Russia wage such a war? This is not operational art. It is simply the destruction of Russian soldiers, summed up Mikhail Samus.